What's up, everybody? It's Chris Denman. You know that. Hey, guys, it's Chris, and ready for some We Are Live action coming up real quick. I just got to tell you about some people that make the show and all of our fun events possible. Come out. We got $1,000 karaoke challenge this 3rd, 5th, 10th, and 12th of March. Very excited about that. Jack Daniel's Tennessee Apple is helping us put that on. It's going to be held at 1860s Saloon in the game room. So come out. You can win $1,000. It's free to enter. You can sign up online through the Facebook event. Come out, hang out. It'll be a blast. Other things happening. March 28th, Jack Daniel's Tennessee Whiskey making target practice workouts. A very fun event. If you've never been, it's our signature comedy show. I'll be hosting that. We've got 8 comics plus 1 comic opening up, our friend Jovan Bibbs. You're going to see some great matchups where people roast pop culture topics. Oh, man, St. Louis, bunch of different stuff. And in the finals, the comics have to roast each other. So always a good time. You can get tickets through Metro Tix. Just search out Target Practice. Looking forward to that March 28th. Weekly comedy at Sophie's. That's right here in Grand Center. 3224 Locust on the 2nd floor. Weekly comedy series. Free to get in. Come out. Have some fun. Every Thursday. Kicks off around 6 o'clock. Specials start at 4. Schlafly and Jack Daniel's specials all night long. Other things happening. Oh, our friends at St. Louis Counseling Services. Mental Health Matters is their podcast. But guess what? They're a full-service counseling agency as well. Check out stlouiscounseling.org online for more information. Also, our friends at gatewaypowdercoat.com. Check out Gateway Powder Coating for the #1 resource for powder coating in the Midwest. Also, a couple big shout-outs to all of you guys for checking out last week's episode with Jamie Fritz. We're going to have a full schedule. Lots of great guests here in the coming weeks, months, forever, right? So be sure to support all those who support us, and big thanks to Tech Electronics for the studio love, and plenty to get to, but enjoy the show.
We are live, live, live. We are live, live, live. We are live, live, live. We are live.
What's up, guys? It's Chris, and we are live one-on-one today with Jeremy Essig. He's headlining Helium Comedy Club right here in St. Louis in the garage all weekend long. What's up, man?
Hey, buddy. How are you?
Doing great. Good to see you. It was funny, too. We talked about this a little bit, but so the way this works is Helium's publicist, who's based in another city, contacts me. Hey, do you have time for so-and-so? Let's get them in at this time, part of press. It sells tickets. She hits me up, and it was just really funny because I know our guest today, Jeremy Essig, personally for a little while now. And she's like, hey, do you want to get Jeremy Essig in? So that was I was like, oh, Jeremy's back in town. And I told you this already, but I was like, yes, I will have comedian
Jeremy Essig,
yeah,
who last I saw, we were all on stage singing We Are the World.
Exactly. At a show we did.
Southtown Pub.
Southtown Pub, rest in peace. Gosh, man. So you're in North Carolina now.
Yeah.
Wow. So let's back this up. So you lived here in St. Louis for a while. Comedian, musician, audio engineer, writer,
Music journalist.
Music journalist, yes.
College professor at Webster.
Okay. All right. All right, Jeremy. This is enough. What else?
That's a lot of jobs.
That is. That's like 17. And you've recently moved out to North Carolina.
Yeah, in September of last year.
And where are you based there?
Raleigh.
How's Raleigh?
Raleigh's amazing.
Yeah?
It's so I went to college in Winston-Salem, which is about 3 hours away at Wake Forest. And so we used to go to Raleigh every once in a while. So I have a lot of friends there, but there was a guy who used to own Goodnights before Helium took it over.
Okay.
So I didn't work for him ever. So then when Goodnights took it over, I hadn't been to Raleigh in, I don't know, 7 years.
Yeah.
And I was just like, oh, what happened to this? Because it used to be like a really small, it's a capital, but it used to be a really small city. And then it
like
just.
Quaint.
Yeah, like now there's construction everywhere. There's buildings going up, a lot of like tech people. So it's like a very different city. So there was a point at which I was flying down there once a month, be it for comedy or sometimes I'd just go for concerts or whatever. And then there was just a point where I was like, well, this is becoming ridiculous.
Yeah.
And I know people here, and it's closer to Helium's home base in Philly.
Right.
So like it's a direct 50-minute flight that costs me about $200 to get to Philly. where from here it was 500, had to go through Atlanta, took up the whole day. So like
Right.
I can just go up to Philly and do something and then fly home.
So yeah, you're here again. You're at Helium all weekend.
You're
headlining
here
the
again.
garage.
Yet you're here again.
Here he is, Jeremy. Great. But so you're a stand-up and you headline, but you also are in charge of Helium's audio. How do we put this? So you're the head audio director.
Yes, I guess that would be audio director. I was going to say tech, but I like director.
Yeah,
That sounds better.
that's
yeah.
good. Yeah, yeah.
I do. All of Helium's AV stuff, and then I run the record label.
And there's 6 locations, 7 locations. How many?
6.
6 locations. So you do that, and then you've recently just started. So you run the record label.
Uh-huh.
What is that like playing both sides of the field, being an artist and being part of a record label where you have to make tough decisions, right?
Yeah, I think it's actually really helpful.
Yeah.
Because having done this, especially for so long, like I kind of know. The album that I'm going to record in April will be the 4th one I've done. So I've been on the other end of, labels not getting back to me. Why is my release screwed up?
Good point, yeah.
We told you we were going to focus on your album. We ended up releasing 5 other albums on the day of your album, so we don't care. So I think that's been helpful, and also. I'm not speaking of any specific person, but knowing the insanity that can be comics sometimes
It's actually it's crazy because I see I'm not nearly as long as you and not the same, I guess, viewpoint that you have being a comic yourself, but more and more you do start to realize you're like, oh, like these people in general can be a certain way.
Yeah.
And that's probably what drives them to do comedy too. But
Yeah.
it is interesting. But it's good to have that mindset, knowing what kind of animal you're dealing with.
Yeah,
right?
well, I mean, it's, especially doing this for so many years and working with comics, and especially when you're coming up, like you're opening for someone and you realize pretty quickly, like, this is their show and they can throw you off this show if they want to. Right. So you learn a way to deal with people to kind of, I don't want to say like stand your ground because that's the wrong phrasing, but like, not be completely pushed around, but in the same sense, respect you learn how to phrase things flexible.
Right.
So I think it helps running the label with that too, of knowing like kind of how to go like, oh yeah, no, I know you want the album to come out on date X, but you didn't get me the art till 4 days before date X, so we cannot put it out on date X. But finding a way to phrase that in a way that sounds more positive instead of just going, hey, you didn't send me the art, so this is on you. You know what I mean? You can't really, that's just rude.
That can blow things up. So, I find this to be really interesting because I think it's a smart move by you guys to do that. And with your capabilities, it's a unique move, right? Yeah. So you're a comic who can also do audio engineering and you handle all these clubs. How did the label come about? And then who was the first album that you guys put out?
So it was, I had the idea. There were just some things with my last album I wasn't super happy with, and I'll just leave it at that.
Yeah.
So then I was kind of like, well, once I kind of, especially when I had my studio here in St. Louis, I was like, well, I can just do this. And then I was like, but I'm not someone who likes to reach out to people and go like, can I do your album? Like I guess it would be like, if the way they do baseball now, where like they don't, like the Tampa Bay Rays, they don't really have a starter. They have like a guy that pitches 2 innings and a guy that pitches like, another 2 innings. I'm that second guy.
Yeah.
Like I'm real good at getting in and like talking to you once, but I'm not someone who's like, do you want to do an album? Like I just feel really uncomfortable.
You're not. Yeah. I've sales and relationships is all I do all day long, and it is different because it's funny because people don't realize it. It's extremely difficult, and it is a skill set to do that outreach, whether it's trying to get somebody to sponsor something or even just starting a conversation and people taking you seriously.
Yeah.
Right?
Well, that was so I thought like, and I've always had a really good relationship with Helium. I like the talent that they work with. So I just kind of reached out to Mark Grossman and he was like, yeah, let's see what happens. So we kind of, I wired up all the clubs and the first album we recorded was Chip Chantry, who will be here next week, actually.
Oh, wow.
Opening for the Beth Stelling, maybe?
That sounds right. Yes, I think that's right.
So his was the first one we recorded.
Yeah.
Kind of from there we've done, I think we have 11 out right now.
11?
11.
Wow.
I have 5 more that are finished and just, are slotted for release for promotional reasons.
Right.
And then we have another at least 7 to 10 that we have booked for this year.
That's fantastic. So how does that work? Do you have input on who you want to record? Do you just literally just run up the chain and say, hey, reach out to these people I'd like to? Are these people up and coming, as in they're going to be feature level and doing some headlining? How do you, I guess, decide who's going to be on that?
It's been that's been really great because it's been, I feel, very collaborative, both between myself and Mark and the other people at Helium who work in booking, and I don't know if they want their names out there, so I guess I won't say them, but you know, but they deserve a lot of, no, they deserve a lot of credit. It's you know, there've been a couple people that I'm like, hey, it'd be cool if we did this. There've been a couple people that Mark has called me and gone like, hey, we just had this guy in Philly or this girl in Philly, like I think we should do their album. And then there's been input from the booking side of Helium, where they're like, hey, I've got a good relationship with this person, I think you'd really like it. Like that's 100% how like we did Sean Patton's album, and I know Sean personally, but I would have felt completely uncomfortable reaching out to him, and that came from someone in Helium's booking department. They were like, hey, I think Sean might be ready to do an album. I really love Sean. And I was like, they didn't even know I knew him, and I was like, oh, I love Sean Patton.
That's
like,
fantastic.
So it's been very collaborative that way.
That's a really good way to do it. If you're a comic and you're aspiring to get that album out on Helium's record label, what could you expect? Or I guess, and this may be your department, maybe it's not, but you've put out albums yourself. Whenever somebody comes to you and says, what can I expect from this? Like, what's this going to do for me? Is this going to be a financial win? Is it about distribution? I guess, what is the main advantage of doing something on a Helium album?
Well, I mean,
It's a credit, number one,
well,
right?
yeah.
Say, a nationwide, super successful comedy chain believed me enough to put out an album.
Yeah.
That's a big thing on its own.
I mean, not to drill down too far into it, but because I'm not going to get into the financials, there are some reasons there, but I won't, whatever. You know, the main thing is whenever we put out an album, it's promoted throughout Helium's chain. So, like, let's say you're a St. Louis comedian, we do an album with you. Well, Helium Portland is going to have on their Facebook and on their Twitter when it comes out, hey, so it's opening up to, I forget the number, Mark has it better than me, but something like 40 to 50,000 people the day of your release. So that is a big thing.
A focused group of
yeah,
people.
a focus. You know, people that are looking
into
for
comedy and
Yep. So that's one thing. You know, another is you know, they look at the sales numbers. So we've had a couple, I would say, kind of like you said, people that could headline, still do a lot of featuring, you know, maybe they're not that well known for whatever reason, where they'll look at the sales and go like, oh, that person has people. Like, I've got sales charts where I can go city by city. This is how many streams it's in this city. This is whatever.
Drilling down,
so they'll look at that and they've gotten more work.
Yeah.
You know, and then the third thing, we have a really good relationship with satellite radio, which is where the financial comes in.
That's where, like, and again, I won't, you know, I don't want to put anybody's business out there, but I've heard that, and I've heard, it's super helpful if it's clean, because there is a big market for that. But then also, it's actually insane to me the amount of money a comic can make on satellite radio as compared to the grinding of touring and all the hard work you guys put in. But when I heard a few figures from somebody who's not going to sell out everywhere they go, that was insane. I was really happy I was happy to hear that.
Yeah, it's really crazy. It's, you know, it's controlled. Controlled maybe is the wrong word, but it's directed through the government. So the government is what decides those pay rates, and that's where the checks come. So like when my last album came out, it got pretty significant satellite radio play, and I was like, oh, because I didn't know either. I was like, what is happening? Oh, I just got this check. That's great. And so when we did those best of recordings that we did throughout the chain, the first one's coming out in early April.
You did one here in St. Louis,
we did.
too. Yeah.
We did, and those are going to be compilations. So, like, you'll have an album, first track might be someone from St. Louis, second track might be someone from Portland,
that's awesome.
third track.
And these are, and if it's all based on, like, the people from here in St. Louis, like, that's huge for them. Like, that's a really good thing.
Yeah,
Like,
well, that was my idea, was kind of like, you know, either, let's say, you're, you know, hosting locally, maybe featuring occasionally, you want to get out on the road more, but, you know, having done this as long as I have, the money there is just, you know, you essentially lose money to go work half the time.
You do, and it's like, and it's not getting any better. Like,
Right, no.
Because and that's the problem too, because every person who's booked more than a few shows knows the rub. Like they
Yeah.
know what you're getting everywhere.
Yeah.
So you can throw a number at them and maybe they're going to, but I don't know how you guys do it sometimes.
Well, I mean, that's exactly it. So, like, my kind of thought with this was like, okay, either you're in that position, so you have a day job or a bartender, whatever. So we get you a little bit, you can get a little bit of satellite radio money. Maybe you can not work as many shifts and you don't care that you're going to wherever and losing money.
Then you can go do that. Yeah.
Or if you're on the other end, if you are someone who, I mean, there was a period where I was touring for 3 years without a week off because I had to financially. I just had to. And
All comedy?
all comedy
Oh
for
my
3 straight years. And it was exhausting. And at the end of it, I was completely burnt. And
Sleeping on couches, hotels?
it was
what are we
mostly
doing?
hoses.
Oh, that's okay.
But,
Okay, that's a
I
little
mean,
better, but
just
still.
yeah, the travel
Yeah.
and like, so if you're on that end of the spectrum, it's like, okay, well then maybe you don't have to take all those weeks, you know,
Right.
to because you're making the satellite. Okay, it's worth. I can take a week off every month.
And what you guys are always chasing that carrot too, because you always do more, always do more. Talking to people that are just starting out, up to people who've been headliners for 20 plus years. I do not envy what is expected of you all right now. And then now, like, you might as well be a video editor if you're a stand-up comic, because it is super. It is. We have a studio here. It is expensive to cut video and to do it right and to make it look right. And Andrew Schultz has now made every comic ever think that they can be like, well, gotta put it on. And it's so helpful, but at the same time, like, I don't know that everybody's gonna have time for that. Or I guess it's just
No, well,
overwhelming.
It's
is
time, and it's also like everything in this business. Really, there's a law of diminishing returns as to which, okay, you know, someone like Andrew or whatever, they did that, and it's like, oh, that was really great for their career.
Also paired with, he's in New York, he does all these other things, and he happened to jump on Joe Rogan at a really good time too. Like, there's a lot that goes into that.
Sure, but now, I mean, even my Facebook feed, it's like, oh, it's just comic after comic after comic after comic with a video, and you know, and I mean, this is also, I think, something you learn in this business maybe too late. I luckily had Greg Warren kind of act as my big brother when I started, who was like, nope. And, you know, when I was young and I was like, man, screw you. Like, I'm doing and he would just be like, no, you're not. Like, it was very like that. But I think, you know, you see a lot of people too, you put all that video out there before you're ready, and then it kind of haunts you. You know, I mean, this is it's not exactly the same story, but when Rooftop Media started, they had a camera in the Funny Bone, and that was their only club that they had it at first, and they so they would tape open mic. The initial idea for Rooftop was, we're just going to tape open mics around the country, which my thought was like, no one wants to, whatever. But anyway, anyways, so, you know, I always had this policy at the Funny Bone in my own head that was like, you know, I headline here, so if I'm coming to open mic, I'm not going to like bring out the hits. You know what I mean? It's like, I'm going to work on new stuff, and if it doesn't work, who cares? I work here. Who cares?
Yeah.
So Rooftop was taping that and putting it up every week, and some of the sets were good, and some of the sets were absolutely terrible, but they even told me, they said, man, we really like that every time you come in, you have new stuff. And I was like, yeah, who cares? Like, who's watching this?
Right.
So cut to a couple years later, I had a manager, and they were pitching me for something on Comedy Central, and he goes, hey, I just got this weird thing back from them, because we were like pretty close. And I go, what's that? And they go, she said, yeah, I know who that guy is. I've seen a bunch of his stuff on Rooftop. He goes, what does that mean? And I was like, oh, no.
Oh, wow.
Like, 'cause, you know, I guess, you know, you're watching it without context, and it's like, this guy just goes up every week and kind of says stuff, and it's half-baked and, not defined punchlines. And I was like, oh, that's a bad thing.
Yeah.
So I think, you know, when you're, and, you know, that's a little different, but I mean, I think that is the thing with comics. Like, you don't necessarily know. Like, we've had people suggested to us for the label.
Right.
That I've been like, okay, I'll go check out their video. And it's like, you don't know what video I'm finding. You know what I mean?
So
like, it's
true.
just like, I don't, look, and I don't mean this at a slight, I don't have time to go through every one of your videos.
No.
I'm going to type your name into Google and watch the first thing that comes up.
I'll be honest. Like, people will hit me for our little shows or whatever we do. Like, I'll have people like, hey, here's a video, blah, blah. I'm busy. Like, I work 8 to 12 hours a day. It's crazy running around. and we do these shows that are fun and all that stuff. And I take them serious. Like I try not to put people up that don't, whatever,
Sure.
because there's an audience. But at the same time, I'll be honest. Like I'm gonna go for a recommendation before I'm gonna watch somebody's video.
Oh, yeah.
I'm gonna trust somebody
Sure.
else. I do watch videos, but I can't imagine someone that had to do that, like a booker at a club.
Oh God.
I can't. I'm friends with a few bookers on Facebook, and I'm just like, I just sit there and I see them post, and I'm like, I bet they get, I don't know, 20 submissions a day. Like if it's a big club.
Oh, yeah.
Right. Like,
Oh,
and
easy.
they're kind of a known person.
Easy.
At least, right? And then it sucks because you can't fault the comics for doing that either. Like I'm not mad at the comics for doing that, but like, whew, it's a lot.
Oh no, I mean, I started in 2000, so this was back in the time where people would still have to physically mail VHS
effort,
tapes
too, yeah.
or DVDs, and it was just like I remember sitting in the offices at Go Bananas because I started in Cincinnati,
Okay.
and just seeing every day this like stack of packages, and
Stack
my
of 'em.
friends working there like I'm not,
This is a
and
thing.
and then eventually, I mean, I hate to say it, but it would often become a hate sport. It would be like, oh no, I'm only watching this to see the worst of the worst. Like the tapes I saw when I was my
Yeah.
favorite. This was in Cincinnati. This kid rented out the club during the day. He's like, I want to tape my material, and my friend Mikey, he was like, yeah, whatever. So and he didn't go down there. He's like, the kid paid for it. I don't care. And so this is like a couple months later. He's like, you have to see this. And I was like, all right, so it's that kid's tape.
No
And
audience?
Oh, better. He puts the tape in, and it's starts with a set shot of the guy straight ahead on stage,
Yeah.
and then he hits his first punchline, and there's a pan to the audience, but it's like a high school cafeteria, and it's just people laughing. And my friend Mikey looks at me and he goes, "Does he think I don't know what my own club looks like?"
He sliced in.
Yeah, he sliced it.
Footage?
Yeah, oh, there were so many of those. Like there was another guy. This was when I was living in Minneapolis. We watched this tape where he was basically behind like a black screen, like you
Yeah.
have here in his house, clearly his house.
Yeah.
And then it would cut to the laugh, and it was a giant theater.
Love this.
There are these legendary tapes, which unfortunately I lost in my divorce. Not like
Sorry
part
to
of the
hear that.
divorce, but it was just in a box.
It was legally
Bad
made to
Comedy
get you-
volumes 1 through 4. It was made by these guys that worked in a booking office in Minneapolis, and they
Oh
would
my
like the thing. It was just one guy had put a bed sheet behind him, and he's like his cat's running through the video, like just such
Phone rings in the
oh yeah,
background,
just
yeah.
amazing.
Cut to a theater full of people
Yeah.
dying laughing.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. This is why you're here. This is the stuff I need to hear. And these are the things that people need to hear. Quick reminder, Jeremy's at the Garage Helium all weekend long, guys. Go check that out. Curious about, gosh, so you started in 2000. I know a few headliners you've worked with. I guess the difference between someone I'm trying to articulate this correctly. So you've worked with some big names.
Sure.
You yourself have been doing comedy since 2000, very respected, headline yourself. What is the difference between somebody that's doing shows at your level and then somebody that's like, you work with Brian Posehn a lot?
Sure.
What's the difference in that? Is that the TV, the acting side of things that jumps up the career? Because people respect you. Like, it's not like he's not funny, he's not
Sure.
going to do this. What's the difference between somebody at your level and theirs?
I think part of it is credits, and
Yeah.
but I think Brian's a very good example of his audience is defined. You know what I mean? I mean, it's been kind of funny actually working with him in the kind of while he was doing those spots on Big Bang Theory, because, and he even said it, he was like, there were people that just knew him as his character Bert, and they didn't.
I've never seen that show.
Neither have I.
And that's insane. Yes.
But no, I mean, the best was my friends that own Felix's.
Yeah.
I was in there, and one of their moms sometimes works the door, and she came up. I was sitting at the bar, and she came up, and she goes, "Hey, do you still work at Helium, right?" And I go, "Yeah, I do shows over there." And she goes, "This guy's coming. I really want to see this guy." And I'm like, "Oh, I wonder who they're having that like a 60-year-old woman would want to see."
Yeah.
And she pointed at Brian, and I go, how do you know who that is?
Secret Dungeons and Dragons
Yeah,
fan?
and
Like,
she goes,
what's
I
happening?
just love him on Big Bang Theory. And I was just, I always think
That's
back
great.
to Rogan's first album, which, I think came out right when I started doing comedy, like 2000.
Was it the Jihad one or something?
It was
or-
before that.
Okay.
It was before it was right after he had just gotten off news radio.
Yeah.
And his opening line is like, if you guys are expecting to see Joe the electrician, you are at the wrong show. And that I always remember that. So, I mean, I think, a lot of it is just defining your audience. And I
Right.
don't know, I think if you have, when you talk about credits or TV shows or whatever, that helps that.
Yeah.
We had a pilot shot for a show that I was supposed to do that almost got picked up and didn't. And I feel like if that had gotten picked up, that would have defined the audience.
another
and
level.
it would have, but so be it.
Still plenty of time for pilots. Man, that's with TV stuff, that's an interesting thing. You hear of all these people. A network will spend multiple millions of dollars like on a pilot film, however many episodes, and then they're just like, not this time around. We'll keep it and sit on. And they don't even like give it to the people who make it or anything. They just sit on it.
Oh yeah. Well, I mean,
That's
they do that
insane.
with records too. That's
Yeah. Oh my God!
that's-
Can you imagine if you?
Oh no, that's this story. I've always been intrigued by this story. Juliana Hatfield, I guess it was going to be her 4th album. It was called God's Foot, and they just said, we don't hear a single. Go back and write a single. And she said, I'm like, this is the album. I don't have, and I'm paraphrasing all of this.
Yeah.
It's not like I was in the room, but and they go, okay, never mind. That album is still sitting somewhere. This was recorded, 95, 97. It's still sitting in a vault somewhere. And I read this interview with her where she's like, yeah, I'd love to release it. I can't afford to buy it back from them.
Oh my God! I mean, you hear these nightmare stories about that where people get into these situations because, especially a comic, that is your life's work.
Yeah.
Like it's just in there and it's just frozen.
Yeah, I mean,
don't
the
get it.
only thing I would say, or at least the way we do it with our comics, is generally comedy, whereas like music, like all my bands, like I own the publishing.
Yes.
There is not really any publishing for comedy,
Right.
Because it's not, you can't necessarily break it down into notes and whatnot. It's like, I mean, you could probably, and not that anyone cares about copyright law or whatever, but like you could just go like, oh, that's the bit you own. Well, now I'm throwing a second and in there. Now it's mine. You know what I mean?
Right. Yeah.
So that's
a little different.
At least like when we do it with comics, it's like, yeah, like we are the copyright owner, which means we own the physical recording of this.
Yeah.
You could also go out tomorrow and do the exact same set and re-release it as your own, and we would have no control.
That's
So
true,
I mean, that's the only good thing with comedy as opposed to like music, where you often, especially young artists, you sign away your publishing, and then they're just like, nope, our stuff.
See ya.
And I mean, it's amazing to me to think about like this album's been sitting around for 20 years.
That's
Just release.
incredible.
I mean, I'd buy it. Just
Right.
release it. It's done.
Let's figure it out.
Yeah, it's just so funny to me. But yeah, so it is sad, but at least I guess with comics, or at least how we do it, it's like,
Yeah.
oh, you're not happy with the album? Well, just go re-record it tomorrow. Like we're good.
You
like
can
no harm,
figure
no
it out.
foul.
Yeah. No, that makes sense too. So, all right, before you get out of here, more stuff on the road. I'm always curious for audiences. Do you feel, or is there a noticeable difference in geography, wherever else? Are there places you absolutely hate to perform? And then are there places where you hear, like, I know you were in Kentucky last week. I've been there with our friend Ian, who you were just there, Ian Bagg. And then I was there when with Preacher Lawson, we did like a video thing all weekend. And I love that place.
Yeah.
And
Lexington's awesome.
is so nice. It's pleasant and all that stuff. And it could also be like, listen, I'm sorry. If you get to hang out with Ian Bagg for a weekend, like seeing him do all of it, the way he works,
Yeah.
it's fun. Preacher's super fun, upbeat, all that. So I also take that into account. I'm in love with that place.
Yeah.
But then there has to be the exact opposite of that too, right?
Yeah, I mean, Lexington's a good example, and I mean, I'll even, you have these cities, and you go like, oh, this place is super great.
Mm-hmm.
Drive an hour down to, I'm not going to name the town in Kentucky where I had to do a show. It was absolutely awful, and you're just
Really?
like, but Lexington's, it's an hour.
They're
like,
cool.
It's right. I mean,
Yeah.
every city, I think has its thing. I feel like Shreveport, Louisiana was terrible. I'm comfortable saying that.
I think that's fair.
But other than that, I mean, there are variances. Like what I think sometimes like a St. Louis crowd is looking for can be vastly different than what a crowd in Portland is looking for.
Right, and then you get into breaking it down. A typical St. Louis crowd or a typical Portland
exactly.
crowd. Go to independent shows in St. Louis, and if it's in one area and then you drive 10 minutes and it's another, they're expecting two totally different things.
Oh, and I've even had that. There have been times where I've been opening for Brian somewhere, and I'm like, this place is awesome.
Yeah.
And then, actually, I'll even tell the reverse story. So we were in this casino outside of Hartford, Connecticut.
Okay.
I think it's
like the big one that everyone does?
Yeah, like the giant one people from New York
Yeah.
come to. So we were there, and I was with him. And
Foxwoods?
I think it was Mohegan Sun. 'cause
Mohegan,
there's
okay,
two.
yeah,
Yeah.
okay.
And I was with him, and full crowds, crazy good crowds. One of those weeks where like I felt like I can get away with anything on stage. Like, I
Yeah.
can say whatever.
They're just ready to party.
And
Yeah.
so the guy who owned the club was like, "Oh my God, such a great week! Like we got to have you come back and headline. You got to come back and headline." And I was like in my head, I was like, "This is Brian's crowd. There's a comic book convention going on right now. Like."
He padded it for you.
Yeah, I was
this is a
I
soft
think
landing.
if you bring me back, this probably isn't going to go like this.
Right,
I doubt
right.
it.
Yeah.
But he like I was, you stayed in the casino, and he would call me because he'd be like, "Here's my email. Let's do a date right now." And I was just like, "Okay, I kind of know how this is gonna go, and it's nothing personal, but."
Yeah.
And so he just kept. He would call up to my room and be like, "Hey, when are we gonna do a date? Why haven't you sent me an email?" Why? And so it was like he wasn't being pushy. I'm sure in his mind he was like, "Excuse me, I'm giving this guy this opportunity."
Probably great money.
Yeah, no, it was really
Yeah.
great money. But I was just like, I don't want to do that to you, but I also don't want to tell you you don't understand your own business. You know what I mean? That seems like
Right.
It's like when comics, I love this, when comics go to bookers and they're like, you book that guy, but you don't book me? Oh, you just told me I'm bad at my job. Thank you. That's awesome. Thank you. I really appreciate that.
Yeah, very polite.
But anyways, so I finally just acquiesced and took the date. And I came back a year later, and it was exactly what I expected. And not, just old people in a casino who had lost a bunch of money. They're in a bad mood anyways. None of my references are working. It's, and I mean, the guy was super nice who owned it. And, he paid me and, but he was just kind of like, well, it was nice to meet you. And I was like, yeah, of course I'm not coming back here.
Saw how this was going to go.
So, I mean, so I've been in places too like that where it's like, you're like, this town's awesome. And then you realize, no, this is just every, metalhead, record store person, comic book person came out this week. Maybe 10 of them will come back to see me when I'm back. But for the most part.
Yeah, they're checking that off as like, listen, that's a life event for some people. To see the guy that they love from TV, like that's a thing. That's very big of you to know that because, again, talking about comedians, that is a funny thing to me. All levels of comics, not just new ones. The lack of self-awareness.
Oh yeah,
I'm like
totally.
I don't know. Yeah, but that's very.
And I think I definitely had that lack of self-awareness when I first started, and I will give all credit to Greg.
Yeah,
knocked that out of me real quick. To where I mean, he was never mean, but it was just like at the time I was like, this guy's such a jerk. But then, like, in retrospect, I'm like, ooh, I would have made a lot more mistakes.
You would, too.
Yeah.
Young men are idiots, number one. And then just having someone to be able to guide you, you don't know what you don't know.
Yeah.
So to have somebody teach you, that's so huge. And I'm sure that still, like, carries it with you today.
Oh, absolutely.
Man, that's so wild, too. In regards to different scenes and things like that, where do you think St. Louis is at right now? Because personally, I've been around it for 4 years now. About the same time we started our radio show and then what it's evolved into this. I was watching and it was about the exact same time because I remember starting the show and I was listening to WTF and Mark Maron was like, hey, St. Louis is getting a Helium. That's good news. I'll never forget that. And I started like looking around. I'm like, oh, this is pretty exciting. At the same time we started our thing, like all these heroes of mine that have been on, because I listen to podcasts all the time. I'm like, I could book these guys. I could talk to these guys. Oh, it's happening. It's happening. Because no offense to Funny Bone or anything else. It's just I just didn't know what it was exciting to me, and I was new to it. But I've seen a ton of growth, and I see you're seeing people kind of rise and get better, and there's more opportunities. You have much bigger perspective. You've been all over. You've toured. You've worked with many different types of comics. as far as a scene, where do you think St. Louis is right now?
I mean, honestly, it's hard for me to comment on that. Like when I moved here, the scene was or quickly became. It was myself. It was Greg Warren. It was Nikki Glazer. It was Tommy Johnigan. Josh Arnold, who's now on Bob and Tom.
Yeah.
There was like this, like it was like people would come in here to
Some heavy hits, man.
Yeah, like there was honestly 1 or 2 years where we didn't have to go do Montreal showcases. Montreal people came here to showcase.
Holy cow.
And then people leave and move, and
Sure.
unfortunately, like some really funny people like Matt Conti just decided they didn't want to do it anymore. So kind of when that broke apart is when I went on that tour for 3 years. And then, to be honest, I don't, unless I'll do your show or whatever, I don't do a lot of local shows, so I don't feel that comfortable commenting. I will say that when we did that best of taping, I was very impressed with it, because you just don't see people for so long, and then you watch them and you go like, ooh, there has been some progress.
You want to talk about self-awareness and all those things. I learned real quick, and I'll credit Chris Sear with this, who... It's really fun. You guys' cadences sometimes match up. It's funny
really?
like that. Yeah. This whatever. One of those things. Chris Sear, it was just like book shows or whatever. I would just write somebody off, or I would go see somebody perform. I'm like, oh God, like, and who the fuck am I?
No,
but whatever. I'm doing what I'm doing, and then you do see someone a few weeks later or a month later, give it a year, and you're like, whoa, like who is that? Like they've been working, and like immediately feel terrible. You know what I mean?
But I mean that's it. There's I was I learned this pretty early on just watching other comics. It's like, and I was quick to get work. I got very I was hosting within 8 months of starting at a comedy club. I was on the road middling within 3 years. Like I had a very and, I mean it was also a different time in booking, and no one cares. But like. What I learned pretty quickly, because I ran the open mic at Go Bananas and I ran the open mic at Joker's, which is a club that used to be in Dayton. And yeah, I'd be like, oh, this. And what I learned quickly is like, okay, yeah, that person was terrible, and they don't need to get on every week or whatever.
Right.
But like, don't write, because you'd see people, they'd go off and do, and I was the scenes weren't like they are now, where there were like a bunch of independent shows. It was like you show up at the club, maybe there's a bar. If then you have to drive up to Columbus for the next closest once a week bar show. So it was like, but I would see these people and it would just be like, oh, they put work. There's nothing more disappointing to me than seeing someone who's been doing it 5+ years at open mic, doing the same jokes. They're still not working, and then they like complain like, well, I'm just not getting anywhere. And it's like, yeah. That's not.
Would you book you?
That's not going to get better. Like that. When you say like lack of self-awareness. Whereas I think the best thing is like, just I love watching someone where you're like, that joke's like halfway there. Like that's a good idea that you're not necessarily executing right. Mm-hmm. And then you like watch them execute it right, and you're like, you figured it out.
Did it?
Like I mean, even myself, like there are some things I'm like, damn it, I know that's a good idea, and I'm not doing the right thing with it.
Well, and then in your line of work with this man, like you're gonna always do that. You're gonna be a 65-year-old man doing stand-up, learning. You're going to be chopping through. You're going to be doing that. That is an amazing thing to watch and see happen. So I'm glad you're impressed, though. Like, that's it. I'm excited because obviously you become friends with people and everything like that. But it's funny, as someone who books a regular, like, show, I lost, like, 6 good people I could count on this year. But that's a good thing.
Yeah.
Right? Like, my freaking, it's crazy. All these people moved to New York. Most people have recently moved to New York, or, like, work stuff or whatever else. But I think that's a good thing, right?
Yeah.
That
I mean, it shows progress. Yeah.
Yeah. That's definitely. But again, too, I'm like, I gotta
find
get off
other
my
people.
ass and
Yeah,
go
yeah,
see
yeah.
people perform and stuff too. So, well, cool. Jeremy at the garage all weekend long. I'm excited to see that for Helium. It'd be like they've got so much space, and once people actually like make it over there, I'm as bad about it as ever. I'm from the country, so if I'm not like visiting and relaxing at my parents' house in the country, I'm in the city and I don't leave like a 5-mile radius, right?
Yeah.
So Helium is one of the places I do go, and highly recommend you guys go check that out. And what it is in the garage, we said the garage. It's the bar side. It's going to be a more intimate feel. Yep. And hopefully it's like a regular thing.
Yeah, they've. I was telling you this before we started, but Helium started doing this in all their clubs where they have these like secondary 50-seat showrooms. Mm-hmm. And they're really like, I've really enjoyed those. I mean, I'll just be honest. We've discussed this. like I can headline a Wednesday in the main room.
Yeah.
I'm gonna maybe draw 50 people. That just feels uncomfortable. You know what I
Right.
mean? A 300-seat room, there's 50 people in there. Maybe you'll get another 20 if they paper.
Right.
Whereas, like, you know, like I just did their small room in Indy last
Yeah.
year, and it's like, well, I've been working in Indy for years. Not a ton of people, but yeah, both of those shows were super full, and you're not like, oh man, 40 people showed up. You're like, yeah. 40, and that was a hot show.
And they remember it too,
Yeah.
and they'll go follow you online, or they'll be excited about the next time because it is about that feel. It's not necessarily your performance that's
Yeah.
going to dictate that. That look and feel and everything in a room can be huge, right?
Yeah, so I'm hoping this continues here because I think it'd be really cool.
Awesome. We'll go out and see Jeremy at Helium this weekend again in the garage. Man, what a great chat. I really appreciate you
it's
coming
good
by,
seeing you.
man. Absolutely. Anything else going on we need to know about?
I was just gonna say I'm bringing my friend Peggy O'Leary into. She's gonna be opening for me. She's from Philly.
Oh, all weekend.
Yeah,
Great.
she's really funny. So if you're tired of me, she's really funny too.
That's awesome. Thanks, Jeremy.
Yep, no problem. Thank you.
Great. Awesome.
We are live, live, live. We are live,